and the turbo boost technology is up to 3.2 gigahertz, and the initiate or release the instances time is approximate 10 minutes. So if we talk about the storage services, we have the storage related compatibility, the durability. The Alibaba Cloud durability is much more compared with the other vendors. We have the 99.9999 percentage of the durability of the storage services. If we talk about the data availability, is the read is 99.95 while the write is the 99.95 as well. But if we talk about the other vendors availability is 99.99 or 90, you can say. If we talk about the databases, so in the databases we have the comprehensive coverage of the databases, which include the MySQL, PostgreSQLs, and other databases as well. So the databases is divided into two different segments: is the relational database server and the non-relational database server. Is the superior performance, end-to-end analytics, elastic, secure, and reliable. If we talk about the database application migration, so database application migration evaluation compatibilities analytics exist in the PolarDB, which is the Alibaba Cloud native service. Now you can see the database market is the number one Asia Pacific and the third in world of the cloud database market of Alibaba Cloud. The broad set of database product and services are based on the 26 products and services. The cloud native database, like I said, there's a PolarDB, is the compatible with the PostgreSQL, Oracle, and the MySQL, and is native by Alibaba Cloud itself. It means the Alibaba already providing these services directly. If you talk about the high performance, so it's the high performance analytical DBs are available here, and you can use the analytic DB, which is high performance and easy to use. Okay, let's move forward. If we talk about the utilities and the database family, so we have different families available, which includes the PolarDB and the we have OLTP and OLAP. OLTP transaction protocols and OLAP is analytical protocols. And the last is the NoSQLs, which includes the GraphDB and other services. If we talk about the network products and services, so we have the comprehensive service product and portfolio, which cover uh, all connection scenarios, which includes the nets, the SLBs, the elastic IPs, and the other services as well. So we can easily work with these services without any downtime. So CEN, Cloud Enterprise Network, and NAT is a network address translation. So we will discuss later the network services in detail in the VPC section, inshallah. So if we talk about the security services, so we are protecting 40% websites in China and the mitigating of the 3.6 billion attacks each day, right? Which is much more compared with the other services, security services of the other vendors. If you talk about the defending, so the defending against 1500 DDoS attacks each day, and the quarantine is 1,40,000 malicious files each day. The users and cloud, so it's identify the IDaaS, identity as a service, bastion host, RAM like the resource access manager, action trails, risk assessments, and content moderation, real-time authentication, and the antipodes. If we talk about these are different type of security of the on the different layers. So if we talk about the infrastructure security, so we have anti-DDoS, we have WAF, the application firewall, we have the cloud firewalls, and the security centers. If we talk about the data security, we have the KMS, HSM, data encryption, data shield, and the SSL available. Now let's talk about the training and certification products. So we have the option for the online learning, hands-on labs, classroom training, and the professional certifications. So these are the path which you can follow in order to get this training. We have these online trainings right now. We are conducting this training. We have different classroom trainings as well, right? So you can consider this as a virtual classroom training for now. And for the hands-on lab, you need to log in on the LabX account in order to complete this training. And we have the professional certification, which include the ACA, ACP, and ACE, Alibaba Cloud Computing Associate, Professional, and Expert, which includes the cloud computing, cloud security, and the big data. Now if we talk about the traditional web hosting option, so what is traditional web hosting option? Traditional web hosting option is basically allow you to work on the traditional environment. So this is out of the Alibaba Cloud context. We have the application load balancers, we have the app service tiers, we have the database tiers, and the backup options. So if we migrate the traditional environments from the traditional environment to the Alibaba Cloud, so what we will do in the DNS, we will use Alibaba Cloud DNS. Load balancer, we will use the CDN and the SLB called the server load balancer. In the web servers, we will use the Alibaba Cloud auto scaling or the ECS servers. In the application load balancer, we will use the Ali P2P migrations, like the physical to virtual migration or the Ali Cloud migration simple services, in order to migrate these servers, right? And for the database, we will use the database migration tool or the transition tools, right, to move on the RDS, relational database. So this is all about the basics of the Alibaba Cloud services. So let's move on the other theoretical part, which is called the elastic compute services. Let's Okay, that's fine. So in the Alibaba Cloud uh, compute service called the ECS, Elastic Compute Service, this is actually the virtual machine service. So if we see the concept and the instances, so we have we will discuss about the concept, instances, storage, networking, additional settings, and recap, demo, and the hands-on lab. Last but not the least, we will discuss about the hands-on lab, so that you can easily check how we can work on the Alibaba Cloud services in the real manner. Okay, so let's start with the concept. We will discuss this service, so we can skip that part, skip that. So now, yes, so innovation in elastic compute services. What is the innovation in the elastic compute service? So if you see in the innovation part, we have the internet options, we have the artificial intelligence options, we have the movies options, industry options, energy, rendering, and the genetic options. These options allow you to work in the specific domain without worrying about the downtimes and the other issues. Alibaba Cloud have the HPC services called the high performance compute service. So HPC service also available. Now let's check the features exist in the ECS. So Alibaba Cloud ECS is a computing service with the flexible processing capacity, and it allow you to compare to the physical servers. So if you see the physical servers easily used to deploy the services exist in any traditional environment, and you can move here. So if we see that we have the concept of operation and management without cloud, and working compare with the ECS called the elastic compute service. So what's the difference between them? So suppose you have the traditional environment where you can use it without any cloud infrastructure. So you will have to manage the application, data, runtime, middleware, operating system, virtualizations, servers, storage, networking. Compare with the ECS. If you talk about the ECS, we have an application, data, runtime, middleware, operating system, virtualization, servers, storage, and networking. So these are the concept of the ECS. On the cloud, user only need to manage this part of the stack. So if we talk about the virtualization, we have the data centers, we have the server racks, we have the virtualization and elastic compute. So we have 4 different categories. If we talk about the ECS concept, Apsara is the services based on the Pango on the Alibaba Cloud. So ECS run on the Apsara distributed system, which is created by Alibaba itself. It's a virtualization technology and is based on the Zen KVM and utilized the Apsara distributed file system called the Pango for storage. So we have different layers. Start with the data center layers, then Linux clusters, then different sub layers, and then use the ECS, RDS, OSS, table store, and max compute. which is actually running on this layer. And the last but not the least, the open API, which actually help you to provision and select the services on the Alibaba Cloud platform easily without any manual interruptions. This is very easy for use. So if we talk about the ECS concept or the region, so region is actually where the Alibaba Cloud ECS will launch the instance that you create, and it's choose a region to optimize latency, minimize cost, or address regulatory requirements. They start with the 23 regions, 69 zones. Zone is actually the physical data centers. And the region we will talk about is the UAE region, India region, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Australia, Malaysia, Singapore. These are the regions. If we talk about the zones, zones are the physical data centers with independent power grids and network within one regions. Fault isolation can be performed between zones, and each region contain multiple zones. So we can choose based on your distributed policies, which included the creating resources in multiple zones, high availability, high disaster recovery, creating resources in the same zone, and lower network latency. So now if we talk about the private networks, so we have the Singapore zone A and Singapore zone B, which is actually connected with each other, and we have the private network options, and we have the another region, like one is Singapore, one is the Beijing region, and it's connected with the internet and the VPN gateway. Now if we talk about the instances, so an ECS instance is a virtual computing environment called a virtual machine, including CPU, memory, storage, and the other fundamental components required to run a modern operating system. So this is what is presented to the users normally, and we have different instance families available in this burstable type called the burstable type T6, journal type G6, memory type R6, and the compute optimized type C6. So ECS provide a wide selection of the instance families and types optimized to fit different use cases, and the instance type are always varying. Like I told you, we have the 4 to 5 different types called the burstable, journal, memory, and the compute optimized. If we talk about the instance type families, so if you want to learn the actual name and behind the secret of the name, you need to split the name into different segments. Start with the ECS dot G6 and the 3x large. ECS called the elastic compute service. G6 is actually the instance generation, is the 6th generation machine, which represents the instance family, and the instance type is called the 3x large. It means the instance type is the 3x larger than the compare large size, like it's the 16 GB machine. Now if we talk about the instance families, choosing the right ECS type for your workload is start with the T6X6, G5 G6, IC5, C5 C6 compute, big data, network enhance, and the other services. So you can see that each app server type is actually available for the specific purpose, not for every purpose. So let's say if you are using the T6X6 machine, is the small websites or for small applications, and the usage of this machine is to deploy the applications on the server directly. Okay. Now let's move forward. If we talk about the supercomputing and high clock speed, Alibaba Cloud these services as well. Right, is a supercomputing general purpose, the supercomputing optimized GPU, and the other services available. We have the GPU and the FPGA, field programming graphic array, and the graphic processing unit is a graphic cards embedded in these machines called the H6 machines. And basically this allow us to use graphic machine without any other manual interruptions, and it very easy to use. Now if we talk about the instance type families or the bare metal instances, so the advantages of the virtual machines is we have the elastic resources, quick delivery, automated operation and management, and the unified IO interfaces. While the advantages of physical machine which will not get of the virtual machine is a zero performance loss, zero functionality loss, and a strong hardware level isolation which you will not get directly on the virtual machines. Now this is the comparison chart among EC2 ECS bare metal instance, traditional physical machines, or the traditional virtual machines. So delivery in minutes, yes, delivery in minutes in virtual machines or the bare metal, but in a traditional physical machine you will not get machine in minutes. If you talk about computing the zero performance loss and the zero features loss, so we have the instance bare metal and the physical machines, traditional physical machine, yes, but in the virtual machine you must have the feature losses and the performance losses as well. If we talk about the storage, so we have the fully compatible with the ECS cloud disk, which start with the bare metal, yes, and the traditional machine we don't have any option available right now. If we talk about the network, is the fully compatible with the ECS VPC network, fully compatible with the ECS classic network, and the administrations with the fully compatible with the existing ECS management system available. Okay, so if we talk about the instance specification, we have the 64x large, 26x large, 20x large. So these are the different type, which is the huge machines. As you can see, is the RAM is the 1 GB, 1 terabyte, 384 GB RAM, 192 GB RAM. These machines are good for databases and for big data purpose, not for the day-to-day operations, because it takes a much more cost compared with the smaller machines. Now if we talk about the encrypted computing for high security applications, so business characteristic, we have the countermeasures like the block access to the encrypted data of application from OS and hypervisor, like no one can get inside hypervisor from the operating system. As you can see, the hypervisor and the operating system, the app, these are the strictly security appliances applied, which you don't allow to go inside or pass through from one layer to another layer without prior approval or without a proper approval. Okay, we have the third-party virtualizations, any stack and containers. If you see the bare metal scenario, like the physical scenario, so we have the any stack like OpenStack, we have the Cloud Stack, we have the Z Stack. These are the stack which help you to provision your own private cloud. If we talk about the containers, we have the Dockers, we have the Pouch, we have the Clear containers, which actually help to communicate with the actual hypervisors on the Alibaba Cloud, which is called the X Dragon hypervisor. Okay. Now, if we talk about the bare metal scenario, it's a supercomputing. We have the administrators, we have the Alibaba Cloud consoles, SDKs. We have the compatible with the Alibaba Cloud infrastructure, independent high bandwidth called the RDMA, low latency network, independent VPC network, and the SCC built-in minutes. Okay. Now let's move forwards towards the serverless. Alibaba Cloud provides the EC Elastic Container instance called the Run Containers is the serverless option. We can easily upgrade the machines or upgrade engine to the serverless option without any interruptions. It's a fully compatible with K8 and ACS and is independent with K8. K8 means the Kubernetes. K8 masters, multiple namespace, customs options, and the resource definitions options available. It's a better elasticity and agility. We can share the same fundamental infrastructure as the ECS instance, and it's super far startup time. Now, if we talk about the instance failover, so its instance monthly uptime percentage is unavailable for not less than 99.975. It means you will get the uptime availability of each machine is 99.975 of each calendar month. Number 2, instance multi uptime percentage, which we call the multi zone deployment, and it's very easy. It's very easy to get the details on the multi-zone deployments, right? Is 99.995. Remember, the machine will be available on one side, like on one data centers, while your storage will be replicated among other data centers. So if we talk about the pay-as-you-go model, so pay for compute capacity by seconds, bill you for your actual resource usage, and then no long-term commitment for upfront payments. If we talk about the subscription, is the significant discount which is up to 85% compared to the pay-as-you-go model instance pricing. Available in either monthly or yearly subscription, or is better suited for those with stable long-term resource usage. If we talk about the preemptible instance, the price of the preemptible instance varies depending on the supply and demand. Preemptible instances are offered as a lower price compared with the standard pay-as-you-go instances. Alibaba Cloud will release your preemptible instance if your bid is low than the current preemptible. Preemptible means the machine which is very low on the cost and is available anytime, but Alibaba can get this machine from you if the higher bit is available. Let's talk about the reserve instances. What is reserve instance and why do we need to use the reserve instance? And what's the difference among reserve instance, spot, or the preemptible instance, or the pay-as-you-go model? So let's discuss later in the slides. So regarding the reserve instance, we have two models. One is the subscription model and second is called the on-demand model. Regarding the subscription model, we have the reserve capacity and the low long-term cost of ownership. While the on-demand, we have the elasticity, zero upfront payment, and the flexible to manage. So this model is normally used for 1 year or 3 year commitment. Now if we talk about the storage, let's discuss the storage in details. This is the part, by the way, this is a part of the ECS. So storage, we have, if we talk about storage, this is the block storage, this is not an object storage, so just keep in mind. So in the object block storage, the ECS utilize cloud disk as both a system and the data disk. The cloud disk based on the Apsara distributed file system Pangu, and this systems keep 3 redundant copies stored separately on different physical servers attached to a different network switches. Extreme high data reliability and its mount unmount is supported. Currently we have 3 types. One is called the ultra disk, second is called the standard disk, and third is called the enhanced disk. So the ultra disk is the lower one. Number 2, the standard disk called the SSD, solid state drive, and the third one is the enhanced solid state drive. So if you see in the diagram, we have an option for the instance, we have an option of the physical server which is actually connected with the Pango distributed file system DFS, and we have different cloud disk. Now if we talk about the ECS storage in the cloud disk can be purchased independently of the ECS instance. This can be mounted to any instance in the same zone, but is do not support cross zone or the cross region mounting. They can be mounted by only one instance at a time, and its disks are built by type and capacity, and the both pay as you go and the subscription billing methods are supported easily. Now let's talk about the disk. Is the D001 is mounted to instance I001 in the zone A. D means disk, I mean instances. So the D001 is actually mounted to the instance called the zone 001. If it's need to be changed, you need to unmount and remount this. So let's talk about the cloud disk type. By the way, till now, any one of you guys have any question till now? Amjad, Zahid, Numan, any of you guys have any questions? If you guys have any question, please reach me out on the chat box. There is an option on the chat box, or raise hand, I will ask your question. Okay. So we have the performance level to all the PL3, PL2, PL1 and PL0. The maximum capacity of the disk size is 1261 to 32768 GB, like that 32 terabyte of disk on the PL3. This is the enhanced SSD. The lowest in the cost and performance is the ultra disk. As you can see, the maximum capacity of the single disk is 32 terabyte. Maximum IOPS is 5000. Maximum throughput is 140 Mbps. Now if we talk about the storage and the disk snapshots, the ECS snapshots, or the backup you can say, are the copies of the data on the disk at a certain time, and the ECS snapshot can be stored in OSS. And in addition to multiple manually creating snapshots, user can also set up automatic snapshot policies which create ECS snapshots automatically. Recommended scenarios: root line backup of system and data disk. When an accident happens, such as accidental deletions, the deleted data can be retrieved via snapshot. System disk snapshots can be used to create custom image file, and these image file can be then used to quickly create new ECS instances. Data disk snapshot can be used to clone the disk easily. So these are the theoretical part. Definitely we will go and perform some labs as well after this session, right? So that this snapshots, it's an auto snapshots. We can create maximum 100 automatic snapshots policies per region. Definitely the snapshots, if are taking automatically, it's there must be some policies options. So when planning automatic snapshots, is try to avoid making snapshot during your ECS instance peak user time. Snapshot pricing policy. So if we talk about the snapshot pricing policy, snapshots normally work like the 256 manual snapshot per disk, 100 automatic snapshot per disk, and the snapshot fees are always charged based on the amount of storage and the base use of length time the snapshot is kept, depending on the size and usage. Okay, so the next step is the incremental mechanism. If we talk about the ECS snapshots, so ECS snapshots are incrementals, and only changes between the last snapshot and the current snapshot are stored. When snapshot 2 is created, only difference between the current content of the cloud disk and the snapshot 1 are stored. When snapshot 3 is created, only difference between the current content of the cloud disk and the snapshot 2 are stored, and all changes are indexed so that the cloud disk can be restored from any snapshot. Now let's talk about the disk images. So images are complete runtime environment that can be used to boot an ECS instances. Essentially, an image is a snapshot of an ECS instance system disk. Now, okay, Zahid Bashir is asking some question. Okay. Okay, please write a question on the question QA session. I will ask and reply. Okay, so the Mohammad Uwais Khan is asking, sir, what will be the covered in today's session? Only theory, or we will cover the lab part? We will cover the lab part inshallah as well. We will cover the lab part, and I am trying my best to cover the labs just after the theory. Like once we completed the ECS, we will perform the ECS lab as well. Okay, inshallah. So don't worry about that. I will give you the hands-on today. Okay, Zahid Bashir is asking, sir, what's the difference between snapshot and images? Okay, that's great. So Zahid, snapshot is normally used when you don't want to create a new machine from that hard drive. A snapshot normally taking for the data drives which doesn't have the operating system existence, while the images in the behind the image there must be the snapshot as well, but the difference is in the image, using that image you can provision a new machine, and the snapshot will be the operating system snapshot. So that images along with the snapshot help you to provision new machine, and if you take only snapshot you will not able to create a new machine until you provision or create an image, and using that image to create or provision a new machine. I hope you got my point. Do let me know if I miss anything. And thank you guys for taking interest in this course, right? And don't let you go, right? And stay with me throughout the course. We will take multiple breaks after each session, and so that you will not be exhausted, neither I will be exhausted. Okay. Okay. So storage this image. Let's say we have an ECS. In the Alibaba we called ECS called the Elastic Compute Service. In the AWS we have an EC2 option. In the Google Cloud we have the Google Compute Engine called the GCE. Right. So the ECS, we have to option the purchase the ECS instance with your preferred operating system install Nginx, PHP, MySQL, WordPress, and the other configurations. Using a marketplace or the custom image, we can choose with the desired operating system, runtime environment, and packages or pre-installed. Purchase an ECS instance with the chosen image which we have. Now let's talk about the ECS networking. So in the ECS we have the VPC. Remember, without a VPC you cannot provision any machine. So in the VPC we have the V router called the virtual router, we have the route tables, we have the V switches called the virtual switches, we have the elastic IP called the elastic public IP, and we have the security group as well. So in the VPC we have the ECS option along with V switch, we have the V routers including multiple V switches, and we have the security group. If the security group is a set of firewall rules, security group is the stateful firewall which allow you to protect your machines from outside attacks with respect to the ports. So if you talk about the security group is actually a set of firewall rules, and security groups rules either allow or deny traffic. Security group rules include the following information: is action, rule type, whether to accept or block traffic, port range start with like port 80 to 89, port 80 to 100, or you can use the dynamic ports or dynamic or the static port. Like in our scenario we can open port 80 and 443 with all of the world, while we will not use other ports with any other one. If you talk about the authorization objects, so in the authorization objects, which security group ID or IP address range CIDR blocks are applied to. Now if we talk about the networking option security groups, the key features are: the security group are the regional concept, and the security groups can contain ECS instance in a different zones within the same region but not in different regions. So some important characteristic to keep in mind is each ECS instance must belong at least one security group but can belongs to many. By default, ECS instance in the same security group can communicate freely with one another. By default, instance in different security groups cannot communicate with each others unless there is a security group rules that allow it. So if you see in the diagram, we have the actual send connection request, security group lookup rules connected with these inbound rules, protocols, IP from senders, and then the match with the high priority rules. If it's connected, then good. If it's not, it's dropped without sending response messages. Now if we talk about the networking and VPC communications, the communication between the VPC and the internet, so it's assign a public IP to your virtual machines, which help you to communicate your virtual machine outside the cloud. Like if I want to take my RDP of my Windows server, I need a elastic IP in order to communicate. Configure a NAT gateway and attach it to the VPC group, and the load balancer, which actually help your server to get more responses from outside. Okay, so Rabit Afzal is asking, sir, explain the summary of instead of reading the lines, please. Okay, so I'm reading the lines because each lines have the unique dimensions, right? If you see, there is an options, the communication between the VPC and the internet. If I don't read these lines, you will not able to understand in details. So let me explain the one by one. In the VPC communications, we have the VPC and the internet, right? So we need to assign a public IP to the ECS instance. Elastic IP means, or the public IP is the fixed IP which actually help you to communicate your virtual machine outside the internet. The second one, we need to bind this elastic IP, which is actually exist in the VPC but assigned to your virtual machine. ECS is your virtual machines. Number 3, configure a NAT gateway. NAT gateway is a component which help your machine to go outside the internet, and NAT gateway is used with those machines which doesn't have an elastic IP. There is two type of machine. One is called the public machine, second is called the private machine. The public machine must have the elastic IP. The private machine doesn't have elastic IP and is connected with the NAT gateway, so that they can only send the traffic out from the Alibaba Cloud to the internet, but it will not, no one can connect directly from the internet to connect those machines. This is behind the firewall. And in last but not the least, we have the server load balancer called the SLB, the server load balancer, which actually distribute connections to the ECS instance in the VPC group. Let's suppose you have the load balancers and you have two virtual machines behind the load balancers. So load balancer will help you to redirect your traffic from one machine to another machine, and it will distribute the traffic. You got my point, Rabit? Anyone have any questions related to this slide? Please raise your hand and ask the question. Okay, thank you. Yes, Zahid, please ask. Just write a question on the QA bank, question answer bank, and I will explain over there. Yes, there is a subnet concept here like in AWS, but we will discuss the subnet concept here is called the V switches, virtual switches. So inshallah we will discuss the V switches in the VPC topic, VPC section. Currently we are in the ECS sections, so that's why it's not much detail of the VPC part compared with the ECS part. So inshallah we will discuss this part in today's lectures and today's sessions. Okay, don't worry about that. So the elastic IP, as I discussed, is the elastic IP is a public IP address resource, and that you can purchase independently of your ECS instance. You can bind an elastic IP address to an ECS instance and a private SLB instance or a NAT gateway. By the way, how many of you guys are on leave today? Because in Pakistan they are leave today. So how many of you guys are leave from the office, so that you could attend the whole session? Okay, so elastic IP, once you get the elastic IP, you need to buy not only elastic IP but also bandwidth as well. So why do we need the bandwidth with the elastic IP? The reason behind, we need a bandwidth because the traffic is goes out, it are calculated. Let's say you are sending out the traffic from the machine is monthly 1 terabyte or the 500 GB. So you need to buy the 500 GB allocation prior or the pay as you go model connected with the elastic IP. Thank you Jia Yang and the Mohammad Uwais Khan. I got your questions. Thank you. Okay. Now if we talk about the networking option, this is not a detailed network. So keep in mind we have a separate section of a networking part. So networking VPC elastic IP was a standard public IP. So we have elastic IP address and we have the ECS public IP address. So number one, the network environment support in the elastic IP in the VPC supported. In the ECS public IP address, the VPC and the classic network. Purchased separately from ECS, yes. And the ECS public IP is no. Can be reattached to a different ECS instance. Yes, we can attach the elastic IP to the different address, but the public IP and the elastic IP, the difference is the elastic IP we need to buy, while the ECS public IP address we don't need to buy, is automatically assigned. But there is two drawback. One is this IP can be changed whenever you stop and start your machine. Second, that you need to purchase a separate bandwidth for this. Now let's talk about the ENI called the Elastic Network Interface. So ENI or the Elastic Network Interface is a virtual network interface that can be attached to an ECS instance. Is deploy the high availability cluster, failover at low cost, and it's a fine grained network management option. It's a different instance type, it support different number of ENIs. Here's an account can have not more than 100 ENIs in one region. It means you can create only 100 elastic network interface in one region. After that you need to discuss with Alibaba support in order to extend your quota. Now let's talk about the ECS called the additional settings. What other setting do we have in the ECS-Part? Okay, so additional setting we have the instance metadata. So the metadata of the instance include basic information. In the Windows you need to run this line in the browser in order to get your data. Image ID, instance ID, private IP, public IP, host name, these details and the setting options are available in these links, because this link actually connect and talk with the hypervisor in order to get these details. Okay, on the Linux we need to run the curl command. On the Windows we need to invoke the OS methods. The type of the user data is include the batch script, PowerShell script, and the standard user data. Now let's take a recap of the whole what we have learned. So we have the instance 1001, we have the instance 2002. I means the instance, and we have the different data centers called the instance 3 I003. If we talk about the D001 is the Singapore region, and we talk about the D002, we have the Singapore region as well, and it is connected with the intranet, not an internet. So is a part of the same VPC, but each V switches or the virtual switches represent the zone. As you can see, the security group allow cross zone instances. It allows security group to communicate with each other. Elastic IP can be bound to any instance in the region, like here or there, regardless of any data center, because elastic IP is a region dependent, not a zone dependent. Snapshot and image. We have the snapshot and image are visible across all zone in a region, and it's directly connected with the network, because if you create a snapshot, you can create a machine on any network. So my mistake, it's indirectly proportional to the VPC part. It's just created and put it on the object base, and whenever you need to restore the snapshots, you can create the machine on any account. Now let's talk parts the hands-on lab. We will deploy some services, but we have a short of time because we have a lot of services available. So what we will do the ECS resizing disk. This is the part of resizing disk, so we will use this part, and we will try to use the security group of the ECS part. So let's hold here, open the lab account. I have the lab account here. Okay, so before moving forward, let me add my credits here. You can create your own account and LabX as well. Okay, so I need to top up. Because whenever perform a lab, we need credits in order to perform the lab, because now we have 1000 credits. Now let me go and open this one. We have to perform this lab one, Windows, and I will show you the basic application deployments. Okay, so before moving forward, can you please tell me, does anyone have any questions? So please ask me, otherwise let me move forward. Do you have any question, team? I don't think there's have any questions. Okay, now let's talk about the ECS data disk resizing. After that, we will take a small break. So before moving forward, so how LabX work? LabX is the lab account provided by Alibaba. It have the complete details. What we need to do is, right, this is we need to start. These are knowledge points available, cloud resources required. This is a server 2008 ECS servers. The requirement is the familiar use of Windows OS, and we need to increase the disk size from outside first and then inside. Okay, Mohammed Uwais Khan is asking, sir, which certification would be required after this course and the cost of it? Okay, so the certification is required is the ACA, Alibaba Cloud Computing Associate, inshallah, and I will give you some discounts on the Alibaba Cloud exams as well. The official price is 120, but I will discuss with the Alibaba Cloud team if they provide some discounts available. So let me ask the team. Okay, so I just asked the team. If they reply, I will let you know. Okay, can I move forward? Do you have any other question, team? Okay, let's start with the start lab. Okay, it's not allowing me to perform this lab. Just 1 minute, guys. This is not allowing me to perform the lab. Okay, let me discuss with the Alibaba Cloud team. We will perform these labs as well, inshallah, in the server load balancer. Yes, Zahid, this is the first lab, and we have the ENI option for quick fault tolerance and the CN to connect VPC networks. We will perform this lab in the VPC part. So every part have a separate lab. So let me check. Is this not working? So what else do we have in the ECS part? Okay, so we have the basic application of the ECS security. Let's check the security part, and let's try to connect here if they allow me. Okay, let's check other labs. They are not allowing me. Basic application of security group RT. Okay, let's hold for the lab. No, you cannot try the labs because you need to set up the LabX account first, and then you will be able to perform the labs. So unfortunately Alibaba will not allow you, but what you need to do is, guys, you need to create a LabX account or the Alibaba official account in order to perform the labs. Okay, so let's move forward and I will show you some others, and then we will perform the combined lab inshallah. Okay, so we will start the VPC, and